"Yo, is that Mutt even conscious?" a young guy sneered, motioning toward the elderly dog resting quietly at the Marine's side. Beside him stood 75-year-old Thomas Grady, former combat handler, his hand lightly resting on the graying back of his service dog, Duke. Once a fierce and agile German shepherd, Duke now moved with deliberate care, his snout dusted white like powdered snow from the years gone by. The cashier gave a mocking chuckle. "That dog couldn't chase a sandwich, let alone a criminal," he quipped to his co-worker. Thomas heard the remark but said nothing, eyes steady, shoulders squared. He was used to this kind of noise. Ignorance didn't rattle a man who'd stared down death in enemy jungles. But just minutes later, as a masked man sprinted toward the store's sliding doors with stolen electronics clutched in his arms, it wasn't an employee or a security guard or even the store's CCTV system that stepped in. It was Duke, the same old dog they had just mocked. Thomas Grady was a retired Marine Corps dog trainer, 2 tours in Vietnam under his belt, and nearly 2 decades training military K-9 units. The battle had left its marks: a missing finger, a spine injury that made walking a challenge, and fingers knotted by age and pain. Yet those same hands had helped train dogs that saved countless lives in war zones. And Duke? He wasn't just a pet. He was family. The dog had served in Afghanistan as a detection unit before retiring after a shoulder injury, and now he helped Thomas manage his PTSD and assisted with his mobility. Every Saturday, like clockwork, Thomas and Duke shopped at Wilson's grocer. Same store, same route, same faces. But this Saturday had a different air. A cluster of teenagers near the fruit section began whispering and laughing when Duke limped past. "That thing still breathing?" one kid muttered just loud enough. "Looks like someone dragged a stuffed animal in here." Thomas stiffened, his expression calm but unreadable. Years in combat had taught him that silence could carry more weight than words. Duke's ears twitched at the tone, but he held his posture, trained, disciplined, loyal. At the deli, a bored employee nudged another, gesturing at Thomas and Duke. "Look at that relic and his lawn ornament. Bet that dog couldn't stop. A sandwich thief, let alone protect anyone." Even the cashier, Gina, who usually exchanged a warm nod with Thomas, let out a quiet giggle. "Looks more like a display dog than anything else," she said, ringing up the customer ahead. Thomas gave a practiced smile, the kind used during tough military interrogations. "We've both earned our white hairs," he replied calmly. "Some folks just wear their battles on the outside." But the snide remarks didn't let up. As Thomas made his way through the frozen foods, bakery, and dog food aisle, every step felt heavier than usual. His shoulder burned as he tried to lift a large bag of kibble into his cart. Not one person moved to help, not the teenage stalker, watching from just feet away, nor the store staff standing nearby. Duke sat by patiently, eyes scanning, body ready. He might have aged, but his instincts were sharp as ever. There were no dramatic outbursts or arguments, just quiet humiliation, layered in stares, whispers, and careless comments. Death by 1,000. Verbal paper cuts. As Thomas shuffled toward checkout, his lower back screaming with every step, Duke kept perfect rhythm, walking close without straining ahead or lagging. Even in pain, they moved in sync, a bonded pair who had faced harder days together. A woman in yoga pants clutched her child's hand as Thomas passed. "Don't go near him, sweetie. He's dirty. And that dog looks sick." Her voice wasn't low enough. Thomas caught every word. Years spent listening for the softest movement in the jungle made sure of that. A guy behind him in line tapped his expensive watch. "Can we get another register open? This one's jammed behind a museum." "Exhibit and his stuffed dog," he said loudly. The manager walking by just smirked instead of correcting the insult. Duke didn't flinch, though his ears flattened slightly, the only sign he was registering the tension. Patience, just like obedience, was second nature to him. When Thomas accidentally dropped a can of soup, it rolled just out of reach under a shelf. As he bent slowly, his knees groaning with every inch, Duke stepped in. The dog used his nose to gently push the can toward Thomas's hand. Someone watching scoffed. "At least the mutt's good for something," they said, snickering. Like a walking grabber claw for Grandpa. No one came to help. Gina, the cashier, didn't greet Thomas as he reached the register. She didn't ask about paper or plastic like she always did. She didn't even look at him. He paid, nodded, and turned to leave, Duke close beside him, despite the slick floor under his paws. As they neared the exit, it happened. A figure in black bolted from aisle 9, arms full of stolen goods, shoving a staff member aside. "Stop him!" someone yelled as alarms screamed overhead. But not a single soul moved. Not the teenagers. Not the security guard fumbling for his radio. No one, except Duke. The old dog shot forward in a blur. With perfect timing, he lunged and struck the thief's knees with just enough force to send him sprawling into a display of Valentine's Day candy. Boxes flew. People gasped. Phones emerged. Duke stood alert. Over the stunned thief, hackles raised, a deep growl vibrating in his throat. The same people who'd mocked him now stared in silence. "Mom," a kid whispered, eyes wide. "That dog's like a real superhero." Security finally rushed in. One young officer hesitated. "Is he safe?" he asked, inching forward. Thomas reached his partner's side and nodded. "More trained than half the staff here," he said with pride. The thief, handcuffed and bleeding, slightly from his fall, kept his eyes locked on Duke. The dog didn't blink. Thomas lowered himself with effort and stroked Duke's back. "You still got it, partner," he whispered. The store manager arrived moments later, face pale and voice shaking. "Sir, are you all right? Is your dog okay? We're so incredibly sorry about all of this," he stammered, glancing nervously at the cameras, and the crowd now recording from every angle. Thomas rose to his feet slowly, spine resisting the motion. He looked the manager dead in the eye, his voice calm but cutting. "I was all right, until today." The words hit harder than any outburst could. Just feet away, the teen who had earlier joked about Duke's condition now stood frozen, the color drained from his face. The realization of his ignorance washed over him like cold rain. One moment of cruelty had just been answered by a moment of unforgettable courage. From the crowd, an older woman with silver hair stepped forward. Her eyes welled with tears as she looked at Thomas. "Excuse me," she said softly, her voice shaking. "Are you Sergeant Thomas Grady, from the 3rd K9 Division?" Thomas blinked, surprised, his shoulders straightening instinctively. "I used to be, ma'am. Long time ago." She clutched his hand, voice cracking. "You trained my son's dog in Ramadi, 2008. He always said that dog saved his unit's life when their convoy hit an IED trap." She paused, barely holding her composure. "My son came home because of you." A hush fell over the store. Phones were still rolling, but no one dared speak. The only sound was the quiet sniffling from the older woman, the soft breath of Duke standing firm beside Thomas, and the distant beeping of the checkout scanners that suddenly felt inappropriate. Within hours, footage from the store's cameras, paired with dozens of smartphone videos, hit social media. One post from a local news outlet read simply, "Old dog, new hero. Retired K9 stops robbery at Wilson's." It exploded. Veteran pages reposted it with messages of pride. K9 organizations praised Duke's flawless form. Dog lovers, military, families, even strangers who'd never served. Everyone shared the clip. The entire town found itself watching the replay on the evening news. By the next morning, Wilson's grocer held a press conference. The store's logo was overshadowed by a blown-up photo of Duke mid-tackle. Reporters gathered. News vans lined the parking lot. Thomas, reluctantly standing behind a podium, received a lifetime store discount and a plaque recognizing his service. Duke was presented with a brand-new service vest, tailored to fit his aging frame, embroidered in bold letters, "Still standing watch." The teenager who had made the cruel remark on day 1 walked quietly through the crowd after the ceremony, face red, eyes avoiding the cameras. He reached Thomas, voice trembling. "Sir, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I wasn't thinking. I was just—" He paused, choking on his own regret. "Stupid." Thomas looked down at Duke, who sat calmly by his side, then back at the boy. His expression didn't change, but his tone softened. "It's not about what you didn't know," he said. "It's about remembering what you learn after." The boy nodded slowly. Sometimes the most important lessons don't come from a teacher, but from a moment. From that weekend on, everything changed. Thomas still showed up every Saturday, just like always. But now, he didn't push the cart. Employees offered, no, insisted, on doing it for him. Kids waited in line to pet Duke, respectfully asking first, just like their parents had taught them after seeing the video. Military veterans, young and old, began to appear more frequently in the store, quietly offering salutes or heartfelt handshakes. Gina, the cashier who once laughed, now kept gourmet dog treats behind the counter. Every Saturday, without fail, she'd gently hand one to Duke and say, "For our hero." Thomas would nod, accepting the gesture without ever rubbing her past mistake in her face. Forgiveness wasn't a weakness. It was the quiet strength of a man who'd seen too much to hold grudges. Near the checkout line, Wilson's installed a large framed sign. Bold letters on navy blue read, "Respect all service animals," and "The warriors who walk beside them." Below it was a photo of Duke, eyes alert, chest out, tail curved in pride. He wore the new vest like it was a medal. 6 weeks later, the store commissioned a bronze plaque installed beside the entrance. It read, "In honor of Duke, a true protector, a loyal soldier, service never stops." Shoppers would pause at it before entering, especially those who'd once walked by Thomas without seeing him at all. Inside the store, staff competed for the chance to assist him. The deli guy, the same one who once mocked, now had Duke's name memorized and kept a fresh water bowl behind the counter. The yoga pants mom who'd once called him dirty now stopped to let her daughter thank him. Thomas never basked in the attention. He still wore his worn-out cap, still walked with a slow but steady limp, still spoke more with his eyes than with words. But for the first time in years, he felt something different when he walked through those sliding doors. Respect. Duke, too, walked taller. His tail wagged a little more. His eyes sparkled with a sense of duty renewed. He had nothing to prove, and yet he had proved everything. Even now, when someone reached down to pet him too fast, Thomas would offer a small smile and say, "Careful now. He's still got moves." They didn't ask for attention. They didn't want applause. All they ever wanted was to serve. And on one quiet morning, in the middle of a grocery store full of laughter and ignorance, they reminded the world that age doesn't dull courage, and loyalty doesn't expire with time. If this story moved you, remember to respect the silent heroes among us, the ones with scars you don't see, and the ones who still stand guard, even when no one's looking.